Well, hello. What we're going to do is go over some of my essential fly fishing tools that I like to use for bass, trout, muskie. In the last year or two, I've really tried to get rid of most of the non-essentials. What you see here is 95% of what I use for bass, trout, and muskie. There may be a few other nets, some watercraft obviously I may have that's not pictured here, but this is my storage system. I keep things really simple. I think one of the things I've mentioned before is that I think the more you know, the less you actually need. The way I keep my system organized is I use these Yeti Go boxes, and this is not a sponsorship. I paid for these. I normally don't drink the Yeti Kool-Aid. They make some good products, but I don't buy into all their products. But I've seen a couple of my friends fish these out of these boxes, and these boxes are fantastic. They're durable, waterproof, and what I have is the larger compartment box down here. There's 3 different compartments. I'll show this in greater detail, but everything, trout, bass, muskie, that's kind of how it have broken down into. I have all my gear right in here. This box, big box, usually stays at home unless I'm doing a big road trip where I'm going to be gone for 3 or 4 weeks. Other than that, this stays at home. And when I fish, if I'm fishing from a boat, I use these smaller Go boxes. This is usually empty, and because this is a boat box, I'll often have whistles, sunscreen, some boat repair things if I need it. I'll have a journal. I always like to journal. Some lens cleaner, and then lots of zip ties. Never go anywhere without zip ties. But if I know I'm going to be going for bass, I'll show you my system. I'm going to pull the bass stuff out, the tray, the tippet, and the boxes, and just load that into there and go. And then when I'm done, I take the trays out, put them back into the main compartment, and then usually just leave this nice and clean. So this is just ready to go, ready to be filled based on what I'm doing. After that, I have the CIA Orvis rod case. I can carry up to 11-foot rods with this. So I have this broken in 2 compartments. So when I'm doing this, I have this, the front compartment is my trout stuff. I have 2 10-foot 3s, H4s. I have an 11-foot 3. I have an 8-foot 4 weight, and then I also have a 10-foot 3 or 10-foot 4 weight. So those are all my trout rods. Those are the only trout rods I currently own. And then on this side, zippered up, I have my 8-foot 5-inch 10 weight muskie rod, my 11-foot or my 9-foot 11 weight H3 muskie rod, and then I have 8-foot 5-inch 7 weight and a 9-foot 8 weight rod for my bass, and kind of like trout streamers. But that's it. Those are all my trout rods. Whenever I'm doing a big road trip, I may carry this with me, but most of the time I'm just going to carry 1 or 2 rods. If I'm trout fishing locally, I'll just have these river quivers loaded with 1 or 2 rods. I don't fill all the gaps. I use these also for guide trips, and then also when I do schools, especially when we're working with large groups of students, and I want to have extra space for students and clients to have space to store their rods safely. So normally I only have 1, maybe 2 rods at the most stored, and that's that. Next is my wader compartment. I've tried all kinds of different storage systems. This is by far the most convenient for me and the one that I like. Cheap milk crates you can get from Walmart, any store. It can breathe. But I have a pair of boots, my waders, rain jacket, and most importantly, Lysol. So when things get raunchy, wet, damp, and warm, bad things usually happen. So usually find some way to kind of fumigate that disaster. And then some zip ties as well. And then this is my waterproof backpack. Anytime I'm wading, and not from a boat, this is my bag. So whenever I'm fishing from a boat or a watercraft, I take the Yeti Go box. Anytime I'm wading, I have a waterproof backpack. The only reason why I have a waterproof backpack is I'm kind of into photography now, and I like something that I know I can store some camera equipment, usually a body and a lens, and when I fall in the water, which happens on a weekly basis, I know I'm not going to get the camera gear wet. So within this, I have my little camera body. And I have just two fly boxes, two big fly boxes. Trout, nymphs and streamers, and dry flies. I don't store lots and lots of flies. Normally I try to plan for like maybe 2 to 3 weeks out at the most. I don't try to stockpile flies for a year or so out. Maybe if I was going to be working in Alaska where you don't have access to fly shops or mail, FedEx on a regular basis, maybe I would stock up, 4, 5, 6 months out and really stockpile flies. But I live where I live in Pennsylvania. I tie flies. I'm home most of the time. I have access to a number of good fly shops when I'm in a pinch, or I can just call up Foley Mills and just have them send me some flies. So dry flies and nymphs. With this, I really don't carry a lot of flies. Usually I have a little pad from flies I'm going to be tying in the morning that I'm going to transfer over into my box. But I have some little trout streamers, some junk flies, some mops, some eggs, and just a small selection of flies. Nymphs, some wilds, some naturals. Right now I'm tying a lot more pheasant tails. It's sulfur season, so sulfurs with or pheasant tails with like a little bit of a fluorescent yellow wing case for the emerging sulfur, a couple little soft tackles. But this box by Foley Mills, I think you can keep up to 732 flies. I might have 100 and 125 flies right now in this, so just because you have all the slots doesn't mean you need to fill it. So that is that. And basically what I fish out of most of the time, if I'm not fishing with a camera, which I don't always carry with a camera, but the only time I really carry this is if I'm going to be carrying camera gear, and then if I'm walking deep, far away from the car, maybe a mile or two, where I want to make sure that if I need some extra gear, I'll have some extra leaders and just some spare items. But usually when I'm fishing, I'm just pulling off the road and maybe walking a quarter of a mile, half a mile. And this right now is really all I ever carry. It has the Foley Mill flip box right here. It's attached to my waders. This is a little pack that comes with the Orvis waders. Most wader companies will have some sort of little pack that you can flip out of your waders and out. And that's what this is. So I can store up to like over 100 flies with this, but right here, I do have a couple little jig streamers. We've had some high water, so I have a couple mops and just some sulfur patterns and some waltz worms. I mean, that's all I've been fishing the last 3 or 4 days during my lessons and guide trips. Floatant, paste for lion leader, extra nippers. The fly banjo, this same for dry fly fishing. Whenever you're trying to pluck water off, dry fly desiccant is sometimes a necessity, but desiccant is just not good to breathe, and it really wreaks havoc on your hands. So I try to not use it as often as I can. So you can use a rubber band, but this fly banjo is fantastic. You can just look them up online. You're just putting the fly under tension with the rubber band, plucking the rubber band, and it literally just plucks or kicks water, moisture off the fly. So really kind of a game changer for me. Inside this, I have a little Cliff box. These little day wears, these things are fantastic. I've had this one since my first year on the U.S. fly fishing team, which was 2005. I mean, they are just bomb-proof. And then this is empty, but whatever dry flies I want to fish for that day, I find my larger dry fly box, my compartment system, and just try to pick out maybe 4 or 5 different types and a couple of each, lock them in here, and that's how I store them. Also right now I have a couple spools of tippet, my mono rig, my Pierre Sempe, a couple little cider markers, and my tippet, a couple dry fly leaders in case we come into some dry fly action, and that is it. I have really not found myself needing to jump into my larger pack. I kind of make do with what I have, and of course there's going to be times where I may just kind of miss the boat. I may not have the exact fly because I'm kind of minimizing my gear, but usually this allows me to pack or travel incredibly light. I feel a little bit more nimble, and I just feel better. I just feel less bogged down by equipment. And that is kind of the overall equipment, and I'm going to show you up close what these boxes look like. Open this up. So on the far left, some chubby Chernobyls. These are more like heavy indicator flies that I like to use. And then some stimulators for small stream fishing. Lots of X-Caddis. I tie this. This is one of my favorite indicator flies. Incredibly buoyant, easy to tie, floats like a cork. Very good strike indicator tool. And then I have smaller sizes for just matching whatever caddis is coming off. And here is my mayfly selection right now, mostly sulfurs and olives. And again, if we go into green drake season, I'm going to be tying some larger flies. But I usually only plan, again, what I kind of like 3 weeks out at the most, and then some terrestrials. On the nymph box, some scalp snacks, Creelix patterns, little jig patterns, worms, some chunk flies, a few mops, some eggs. I do have a couple. This is more just seasonality, but again, I don't carry. I don't typically lose a lot of flies now these days. This is some sunken ants, a little Gary LaFontaine pupa, a little bird of prey caddis pupa as a soft tackle, and this is my nymph selection. The SOS, a Perdigon version of the SOS, thinned down, but tied in a couple different sizes, different weights. Gasolinas, which are a little thinned out right now in the Perdigons. I have the Quildigons, more in a bluing olive version. Zebra midges. And what I have right here as well is my pheasant tail variations of a sulfur. This is a sunburst sulfur with the sulfurs coming off. Great little pattern. A couple little Frenchies as well. Some just basic pheasant tails. And a couple little variations, sizes, colors of the waltz worm. And that's it in my nymph box. So here's the mothership, the Big Yeti Go box. So we'll start here on the left-hand side. This is bass and toothy critters. So right here I have musky flies. I think I lost 2 musky flies in the last 5 years of fishing. I'm fishing a lot of Joe Goodspeed's, his goop head flies, and I have a couple other deceiver style synthetic versions which are good. I do have a few game changers, but I've been fishing a lot of Joe's goop head. And this is my musky little compartment here, a little plastic tray. I have leader material, split rings, a couple extra whistles, bitey wire from SA, or nitty wire from SA. So whenever I'm musky fishing, I would just simply pull this out and throw that into my box, and that's it. That's all I need to stick in that box. Also in this compartment, don't forget those for toothy critters. But for bass and heavy trout or bigger trout, I have my heavy box, or this is my neutral buoyant. These are my streamers. This is what's going on for bass right now. A couple drunken disorderlies. Still, I like this pattern for both trout and bass. Matt Verlax Wedgehead, great little pattern. This is a pattern a friend of mine, Glenn, gave me. This is from a different tire, but these are called Big Birds. Great streamer pattern for bass. Has some game changers, different sizes, different color schemes, and also the Murdich minnow. This right now, if I'm going to be tying flies, this is probably my #1 bass fly. I like the game changers. Game changers are fantastic, but I only use these. They're phenomenal patterns. Whenever fish become difficult to catch, I'll switch to a game changer. But a lot of times with our bass, especially with the pre-spawn, I don't need overkill. And if I lose one of these Murdich minnows, it's basically 2 minutes of my life and only $1 worth of material. If I hang one of these jerk changers, which I really have found, I love the action and the action of these flies, but you're going to be out $25 or so, and or about 35 minutes of your life tying them. So those are my patterns for kind of like neutral buoyancy. And then I do have a heavier jig box, and this is just mostly just variations of Creelixes and some scalp snacks. Not complicated at all, just some different weights. I adjust sizes and different weights, and that is it. Also coming up, something I'm really looking forward to is the topwater bite, a bunch of poppers, the boogle bugs, kind of my staple right now, along with some newer poppers that are coming out from Foley Mills. So looking forward to the topwater bite. Also in the summer, I will have some smaller poppers for maybe some bluegill, smaller bass, and then also some carp flies. This is the streamer compartment. So here, just extra forceps, nippers. Always carry a flashlight with some duct tape on it. And then my tippet for bass or big trout on streamers. Some butt wire or butt section material maxima. And then I have my Scientific Angler tippet, fluorocarbon tippet. Normally it's anything from 0x to 3x. but 90% of the time I'm just running OX, about 15-pound test. Switching over here, these little sleeves are fantastic from SA or Loon. Essentially, especially if I'm traveling in a different vehicle and I have multiple rods strung up, these are like giant condoms. You unroll them, you stick your rods in there. So if you're fishing with multiple rods and you're keeping them close together, they're going to tangle unless you kind of categorize them or keep them organized by just slipping the sleeve over them, and then that way your lines don't cross. Also, in this trout compartment, this is more of the trout compartment, I do have a little lanyard or fly line wrapped around this chest pack from Folding Mills. It's great if I'm just fishing small streams. I just want to carry a couple different dry flies. That's what this is for. During peak dry fly fishing, I may have a second cliff box full with other flies. Also here is my panfish and bluegill or sunfish fly box, some little micro streamers, some little dry flies. That's all I need. And some little zebra midges, and I carry a couple of these little pucks just because I want to, if I want to store something. These pucks are just fantastic. Underneath here, some other accessories, just extra indicators, floatant markers, sighter markers. Here, wader repair catch system here, extra floatant, some nippers, extra accessories, and then also just a couple extra pair of sunglasses. Also glasses for different light conditions. Tippets, usually 3X going all the way to 7X. I have some extra mono Pierre Sempe. I have some Maxima for some stiffer streamer stuff for my mono systems, but here's your tippet. And then here are the reels, a couple trout reels, 3 and 4 weights, couple musky reels, intermediate, faster sinking lines in 11 weights and 10 weights, and that's pretty much it. Up at the top here, kick this around, lots of space. I don't use all the space. Contrary to popular belief, I do like fishing lots of dry flies, so I do have a bunch of these manufactured leaders here. If I want, say for example, this is 7.5 feet. If I want to lengthen this to like a 10 or a 12-foot leader, I have 40-pound butt section. Over here, I'll just add 3 feet of butt section to the 7.5 leader, and then I have a 10.5-foot leader overall. So I basically just start with a 7.5, 9 foot, and maybe some 14 foot, and then if I want to lengthen the leader overall, I just simply add the butt section. For years, I would tie my own leaders, and that's still a good way to go if you're very finicky about your leaders. But to be honest with you, in my opinion, the leaders that are available on the market today, SA, Trout Hunter, and so forth, there's some fantastic dry fly leaders. So I just use manufactured leaders. They're easier. There's no knots, so especially if you're fishing small streams, knotted leaders have a tendency of sinking and grabbing vegetation and so forth. So I just like these knotless leaders from Scientific Anglers. Also, a couple of these, especially these are the Orvis dry dropper rigs. Anytime I'm going to be carrying multiple rigs on me, these are it. But this is it. Very simple system. That's it. Thank you for taking the time to watch these little videos. I do want to mention the whole reason why I came up with the YouTube channel was during COVID. It was really the only way I could kind of provide like kind of a live view of what students would be encountering if they were able to meet in person during class. I don't like PowerPoints, and I just wanted to provide students with a kind of a real view on what's going on and what they would see when fishing if on their own. And these videos, even though they're not polished, I appreciate people taking the time to watch the videos. I would love to be able to spend a lot more time making sure I had like a video editor that can go in there and just clean things up, make things look super polished. But that's not the point here. This is kind of like the Mr. Rogers portion of YouTube for me. Is like Mr. Rogers, it was great content, good values, but kind of low production costs. It wasn't highly choreographed. They didn't have lots of expensive sets. They kept things pretty simple, and they wanted to provide a good message. And that's hopefully what these videos are here. is just providing some of the insights that I think will help you become a little bit more organized, a better angler. And that is it. If you could take that message and it helps you keep things organized and enjoy your time a little bit more on the water, then that's all I'm asking for. So thank you for taking the time to watch, and I hope you have a great season. Take care.